So the Buffy reboot got canceled, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little relieved by it, and I'm going to tell you why I'm relieved by it because it's not what you think, and I just want to kind of get my explanation out as to why I think that this is a good idea. Before I say anything else, let me establish the fact that I am a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Anderson. I do all types of pop culture, comics, movies, stuff like that. But if you are a regular viewer of mine, then you know that I am a Buffy fan that likes to talk about Buffy lore. I've done multiple videos on the Slayers, witches, vampires, even done a breakdown on the Buffy animated series that never was. I literally have a PVC figure, if the camera can get that, of Buffy, and several Funko Pops of Buffy as well. So when I say I'm glad to hear that this pilot didn't take off, it's not from a place of hate, but rather a place of love. This is not a video that's going to say, hey, burn it all down to the ground. That's not really my style, but I think that this was probably something that was best for the franchise. Okay, so now that we established that, let's kind of get into the video on why I think that it was a good idea that this didn't happen. So, looking back at the history of Buffy, let's look at things that people actually kind of forget. They forget the fact that Buffy was a show that almost didn't exist at all. Back in 1992, they had that movie with Christy Swanson that when it came out, it was a horrible flop. It was a flop so bad that studios didn't want to touch it when Joss Whedon decided to revisit the script and turn it into a TV show. And that's very important for the context because, again, when Joss Whedon wanted to turn it into a TV show, no one wanted to touch it at all. The movie had pretty much poison written all over it. The concept got shopped around multiple studios and it went through major rewrites, and they even moved Buffy from Los Angeles to California as a way to kind of differentiate the show from the movies. Characters were reworked, the tone shifted, and the whole myth got redone, or like a complete overhaul. Even after that, if you go on YouTube right now, you can actually see the pilot for Buffy that aired before the actual pilot aired, if that makes sense. It had a different Willow, a different energy, and it just wasn't the Buffy that we know now, but it had the skeletal structures for what we know as Buffy. So when it eventually got picked up by WB, it went through more development and then became the show that we all know and love. The Buffy we grew up with was the product of multiple failures, rewrites, and years of refinement. So when I look at this reboot getting canceled, I see it as history kind of repeating itself in a way. The difference is they stopped before putting something out that may have harmed the franchise in the long run. And I'm not gonna lie, I did not really like the title of the show. It just didn't really make much sense to me. When you talk about the title, you see it and you see it say Buffy New Sunnydale, or that was like the working title. And the fact that they called it New Sunnydale just kind of tells me a lot about where the creative's headspace was. When you go back to rewatch Buffy, and spoiler alerts for people who are currently watching Buffy for the first time, because I know that this reboot introduced a lot of people to Buffy. Sunnydale gets destroyed at the end of season 7. It swallowed into the earth. Buffy pretty much wins her whole goal, in closing the Hellmouth. That's the Slayer's job. That's the whole point of the show. So it was a symbolic ending, and the idea of planning a new Hellmouth and calling it New Sunnydale just kind of seemed like it was leaning more on nostalgia than actually following the lore. Because the thing is, as all Buffy fans know, the Sunnydale wasn't the only Hellmouth. In fact, I think Giles at the end of season 7 even makes a reference to there being one in Cleveland. So there's no reason to tether a show to a location that no longer exists just for the namesake of it. I feel like it's more less based on nostalgia than anything else. But if you wanted to do something fresh, I would have set it in Cleveland, set it in New York, where Buffy was in the leaked pilot script that may or may not be real, but base it in that those locations. Another factor I don't think that the writers took into account was when they decided to do this show, there was a canon for Buffy from season 8 to 12 where they expanded the Buffy seasons through comic book form. And I don't know if the writers actually looked at that. Now, I wasn't in the writers' room. Trust me, if I was, I would have definitely brought that up. But it expands what happened at the end of season 7 and kind of goes into the ramifications of everything that Willow did and what's the consequences of having every girl activated as a Slayer become Slayer. Because there were some that were on faith level, and then there were some that were beyond faith level. So I think that that was something else that was not taken into account when this pilot came out. Now, it could have been said that it was based in a different reality, which could be the case. It could be a different pocket reality, which definitely exists in the Buffy mythos and the Buffy fandom, definitely. But I think that without mentioning the political fallout or the conflicts between Slayers and the world around them, I think that that would have definitely lacked a lot of lore and lacked a lot of what came before it. They may have taken some elements from the comics because it seemed like vampires were already revealed because of how open they were about vampires in New Sunnydale. And the way I say new vampires, I feel like I'm in True Blood vampires. But there was some elements of that in the show pilot that leaked. So I'm thinking that maybe they did take some of those elements. I think another premise that would have been nice was to have a series based on another Slayer, like the Frey series, which is a futuristic Slayer from thousands of years in the future, where in this dystopian world, vampires are gone, so gone, from the human consciousness that a lot of people think they're a myth once more. So she's the first Slayer called in a millennium, and the comics often cross paths with Buffy's timeline. So it would be interesting to see Buffy mentor a future Slayer. That would have been something that would have been interesting as well. But it's just like certain elements of Buffy, there are like certain elements of the universe that can still be told that can include Buffy in a way that I don't feel like the reboot did. But I think that, we're talking about material that is still being produced because we have Boom Studios, I think, are still hold the license to Buffy. So Buffy's being licensed out. It's just there's not enough fanfare to read those comics and know, like, hey, this is what happened. Again, I love this franchise. So I want to say I say this with a lot of respect towards the actors and the creative team behind Buffy. Again, Buffy was definitely my segue into horror and seeing like female heroines, but I don't think Buffy would have worked as a I don't think Buffy would have worked as a traditional TV show anymore. And I say this again with love, but I think the time for Buffy has been done and is over just because of the fact that Buffy was the blueprint for a lot of supernatural shows. And I feel like we're retreading on old ground. Like the wit, the humor, and the comedy and the emotional stakes was something that Buffy gave us that a lot of shows carried on moving forward, like again True Blood or Vampire Diaries, stuff like that. Like now you see these kind of shows everywhere that it would have had to been something to offer returning fans and new fans so it didn't feel redundant. So if you were to come back to a reboot, you're also competing with newer shows or shows that have a larger fan base, and you're competing with the memory of the original. And it's almost, I would say it's almost like an impossible bar to clear, now adding, the casting complications, where you have an actress who wasn't really interested in coming back. And I can understand, why she wouldn't want to come back, being Sarah Michelle Gellar, but then she said she saw something in this script that made her want to come back. And that's adding a lot more to what possibly this pilot or this show could have been if she decided to come back because of the script. But then speaking of the cast, unfortunately, you know, um, Nicholas Brendan passed away, and so did Michelle Trachtenberg, and they were a big part of the Buffy mythos. These weren't side characters; these were characters that helped Buffy grow as the season's gone on. And Buffy just isn't a character that can work by herself. She needs to have her support system. That is why she survived the longest as she did that's why she survived as long as she did with her friends, because she needed her friends to get her through these difficult times. And unfortunately, like I said, some of the actors that played these characters are no longer with us, or they've moved on from this show. And the elements of age play a factor. So, like, if you were to do a reboot with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, not include her supporting cast, it just wouldn't feel the same in a way. And you would have to find a creative way to explain their absences. And like I said, some of those absences carry like real heavy weight, because a character like Dawn was impactful for Buffy. Like, Dawn was Buffy in a way. Like, Dawn was a part of Buffy, so her not being in the show would have a lot more questions than answers. And then, like I said, unfortunately, Michelle Trachtenberg died earlier this year, and then we just lost Nicholas Brandon a week ago, who was the heart of the Scooby Gang. Like, Xander saw everything. For him to be human, he saw everything going on, and he was the heart of the team. So it just makes it feel more complicated and more bittersweet than actual like happiness and like, oh, everyone's going to be back. So I think that it would take a lot to explain that, and I don't think the pilot would be able to do so. All right, this is a disclaimer because I want to be clear in my personal theory. Like, I don't think that this is a fact, but I just want to kind of think out loud and kind of share my thoughts with you. But after following this franchise so closely, and then like following Buffy, then watching Angel, I feel like maybe, just maybe, Joss Whedon may have had a hand in the pilot not airing. We all know what came out about Joss Whedon, the allegations from Charisma Carpenter, Ray Fisher, and Gal Gadot. The picture that emerges, somebody who could generally be harmful to someone on set. And I'm not here to litigate all of that. But I will say it's real, and it happened, and it does matter. But what I also know is, because you can see it in his work, that Joss Whedon deeply cared about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He cared deeply about these characters. And however flawed he may be behind the scenes as a person, and as a boss, Buffy wasn't just a show to him. These characters that he built from the ground up were elements of himself and people that were close to him. So I think that it may be a possibility, just a possibility, that seeing this version of Buffy move forward without him may have not sat well with him in a way. And whether that manifested as direct interference or quiet conversations with execs, or just a general shadow that he cast over the series and over the show, may have prompted execs to say, we don't want to deal with that. I will say, I think that his fingerprints may be on this not airing. I do. Again, this is just a theory of my own, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But again, I could be completely wrong. Maybe he gave Chloe Zhao, his full blessing behind the scenes. But something about the trajectory of the reboot, and the fact that they said that the reboot was a good choice and stuff like that a year ago, and then for them to say we're going to go ahead and cancel it even though they filmed the pilot, it makes me wonder if there's more behind the scenes going on. So where can I see this franchise going? Option one. I'm going to give you three. I got one. Option one, make it a video game. If you want to do a continuation of Buffy, I think a AAA video game would be good. She has enough fandom behind her, I would say on the same level, if not more, than Tomb Raider, that doing a monster hunting type of game with Buffy as the centerpiece or the center focal point would be pretty good. Now that games are more narrative driven, I feel like it can hold the same emotional weight as like God of War, The Last of Us, and Plague Tale. So I feel like Buffy would be a good game to have. So I think that that would be something interesting. I think fans would like lose their minds over it. Definitely. Option two. Option two. I think that making Buffy a TV show, an animated series, go back to the animated series that they were going to do, make Buffy an animated series where, they can still do the same thing with that script again, uh, basing it in a different reality so that way you're not treading on old, established lore. Have Buffy take place in a different reality where it's an animated series akin to Invincible or something like that. Or, third option, number three, my favorite number, you could just keep it in comics and expand the comic universe through an alternate timeline. Again, I mention alternate timelines a lot because for one, they've already been established in the Buffy mythos, but two, you don't have to do a lot with that. You can build your own lore and build your own continuity with that. Again, with the comics and everything like that. So the key in all of these scenarios, when I give these options, is respecting what came before it. If you're going to do something new, you have to be honest about what universe you're in. Is it canon? Is it an alternate reality? Did you earn a divergence, to make fans make fans believe? So don't just hope that the audience won't have questions, because as we know, and as I do, Buffy fans will have questions when it comes to this franchise. Okay, look, I know this one was a long one. I just want to get my ideas out, but I sat on this for a few days before filming with the cancellation news and Nicholas Brendan's passing, and I want to be thoughtful rather than reactive to the news. The bottom line, in my opinion, is that Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a rich universe that will survive this. There will be other opportunities and other chances for Buffy to get back into the pop culture discussion. One cancellation doesn't mean that the show will never come back. It just means that the next attempt has to be smarter, more intentional, and more honest with the fan base on what they want. So again, I wanted the reboot. I'm going to say that again. I wanted the reboot, but I had to be honest and be transparent about things that weren't going to work. But I hope that makes some sense to you. Let me know what you all think in the comments below. Would a Buffy video game be better? An animated series? Like, what should they do to make Buffy fans happy? Should they just release the pilot on YouTube, kind of like Deadpool did or Ryan Reynolds did with Deadpool? Just release it out there and see what people say. Again, if you're new here and you survived the whole video, thanks. You're clearly my kind of people. Go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. And I'm Anderson. I'm out.